Hello, hello.
Hey,
This is Biweeklycast. This is episode number 60. The host is still here. I'm still Dima Malenko.
I'm still Slava, and today it's a book club episode.
Right. Somehow we don't have any follow-up, so we would probably jumping straight into this. And the book we are going to talk about is Range. How Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. Is that right?
Sounds like that, and I think the title says it all. The question is whether you agree or not.
Yeah, I have thoughts about the title specifically, but how do you want to structure the discussion? Do we give the overview of the book or the key ideas from there, or do we jump at the deep end and go straight into discussion?
I don't think we can go very deep. Let's start with the first impressions first. What is your overall helicopter view impression about this book?
So I need to clarify, right? We are masters of definitions over here. And when you say the first impressions, do you mean like the overall impressions after I read the whole book, or the first impressions that I started getting as I was going through the book?
Let's go for both.
Okay. So I guess as I was progressing through the book, the most memorable impression for me, I guess, was that I don't think the book lived for its title. This How Generalists Triumph in Specialized World. I don't think this what the book is about. And I was so expecting to have that particular discussion there, and it didn't happen, which probably is just which makes the title maybe just a marketing thing rather than a summarization of idea from the book. But then afterwards, my impression was, well, it was okay, but it was so much like all the other books of similar kind, which try to make a big ideas, claims, I guess, rather of psychology and justify them somehow so that we are all entertained and have something to say to impress people at parties or something. What were your thoughts?
At first, I bought an ebook, like the digital version for my Amazon Kindle, and I went maybe like 6 or 7% deep when I realized that I can't read anymore. It just feels like a podcast to me again. I had the same feeling with How Minds Change book that we discussed before.
I was about to make that reference.
So when I switched to Audible, it kind of went smoother. So I was not so irritated because I think I can qualify podcasts as something less pre-designed, produced, and well-structured or thought. And then it started feeling fine, like a person trying to convey an idea. I think in some regards, mixing the definitions and over-explaining, but I can totally see why he got so much feedback from people about this topic, because as far as I understood, he was given public presentations about this thing, and later they evolved into a book. So basically, there used to be a cult of deep dive specialization of people in terms of education, in terms of profession, careers. And I think it makes sense because the generalist path was not that popular back in the day, which I don't see happening right now. So the way he exaggeratingly describes how undervalued generalists are and how everyone doesn't believe in the change of career or the T-shape thing, I think I'm not sure what was the year this book was written, but as of 2025, it doesn't seem that pioneering and fresh.
I think the book was published in 2019, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, back in my bubble, since like 2000s, people started speaking about generalists, humanitarian frames, philosophy, multi-majors, and the other kind of thing. So the deep focus and deep specializations seem to be a thing in the 90s. And earlier.
Could be, and like you said, this book is a summary of authors' kind of research, maybe prior to that. So it's no wonder, I guess, that it's based on early idea. And by the way, we probably should name the author. It's David Epstein. When we say he, we mean David Epstein. Interestingly enough, I had started with an audiobook because that's what I do. I have a lot more time to read books that way rather than sit with them and go through pages. And here I felt somewhat opposite to what you felt, that I thought like it might have been better for me to sit and read and take notes from the book, is because it's felt and still feels to me a little bit kind of disconnected or disjointed. That there are a number of ideas that are roughly from the same area that are being explored in the book, but I don't think they all add up to this how generalists triumph in a specialized world, and they are somewhat disconnected and somewhat different. So I felt it was a little bit difficult for me to keep all those things in mind, especially knowing that we are going to discuss them. And I felt like, oh, it would be better if I had sit and took the notes as I go through them.
I think these are two different points. One is the way you listen to the book. If you were just sitting on the same place or somewhere next to your notebook and you could note down things, I think it definitely would be better. But if you just switch to the text version, it doesn't really help. It's still a number of random ideas that are not thoroughly connected or shaped. So I think it doesn't really matter whether it's audible or text version. It still kind of lacks the consistency.
So before we go into details, let's try to extract some of the ideas that were most interesting or impressive or relevant or invigorating for us, and then go into discussing them. Like, would you be able to name like 3 things that you took away from the book being as a good idea or not so good idea? Like any 3 takeaways?
I would say that he started with the story of Tiger Woods and Roger Federer comparing their career paths. And I think this story is kind of illustrative, but not in the way the author was trying to do it. I think it just shows that there are options. You could do both. You could specialize or you could be generalist, and you can be successful in both routes. The second one is about the learning environments, about this wicked and kind learning environments. And the third one would be probably about lateral thinking.
That's interesting, because I hope that between the two of us, we would get kind of a broader coverage of the book, but at least 2 of the things, two of the takeaways we had, they overlap. I also liked maybe it's not the right word, but the whole idea of wicked and kind environments kind of resonated with me. I think I was able to connect it to some other ideas, like the wartime CEO versus peacetime CEO. Like in a kind environment, you need like peacetime CEO. In a wicked environment, when everything is changing and fluctuating, you need someone more nimble, I guess, like the wartime CEO. I thought that it was a good thing. It added to my arsenal of things to talk about. Same thing about the lateral thinking. I think it's probably the best, and if I may say so, this to me the single most important or useful idea from the book. I also liked this, not the idea, it's not necessarily the takeaway, but I sort of liked, in a sense, a discussion of the was it Columbia or Challenger disaster that happened when the Challenger shuttle, NASA lost the Challenger shuttle, and factors that have contributed to that. I'm not sure I fully 100% agree with the kind of characterization of the causes of the incident there. I agree that like psychological and organizational things played a role in that incident, but I use this as a reminder. Oh, it would be interesting for me personally to dig deeper into the story and maybe more detailed material about that incident, because I'm slightly familiar with kind of the technical side of things there, and it would be I thought it would be interesting for me to get kind of fuller picture of that incident as well.
There is one thing that you probably missed in the audio version: illustrations. Every time there was a graph of something, I couldn't connect it to the text around it. Like, maybe it's about my Kindle, but like, I look at the chart, it's just 2 lines and that's it. It doesn't make way much sense. Like, there were like maybe every 10 to 12 pages a picture, a graph, or a diagram. But normally they are used to work as an evidence for something, to illustrate something, and they didn't. I mean, they sometimes were totally not related to the text that was on that page.
Interesting. But that's entirely unexpected for me, because in the audiobook, maybe you noticed that as well, there is no reference to any of those graphs. And I kind of sort of get used a little bit to the fact that when books, especially books of this kind, they have graphs or extra material, it will be published as a PDF alongside the audiobook, and audiobook will reference, like, see attached material for graph XYZ. This is interesting. Now I'm curious about the graphs that are disconnected from the text in this book. But it's also an illustration. It's entirely disconnected idea, but I was always wary of those aids that we have in cars. You know how in some cars there is a blind spot detectors that light up the little kind of light on the mirror, on the side mirror. So the idea is that if the light is there, it's unsafe to turn or change lanes. You should be wary of that. But then if you go into a car without this aid, how do you know that the aid is not there and you are not safe to turn if the light is not there? It's like, and similar thing with this extra materials. I'm used to the idea that people intentionally reference those ideas, those materials in audiobooks, and when they don't, like, how do I know that I'm missing on something from the book? It's so unfair.
As an example, there is a chart that looks like this.
Interesting.
It says that people who are elite and who are near elite have nearly the same trajectory up to the age of 12. And then they start if they start practicing less than 10 hours, they never get to the elite and their performance decreases. And if they keep practicing 10 or more hours a week, then they progress and they become elite, which doesn't make much sense. It doesn't explain the number of people. What was this experiment about? It's just like a picture. And this picture is totally not related to the story, because right at that page, he was talking about these two guys, Tiger Woods and Roger Federer. And then there's just a picture. And then he keeps the story. Why?
Well, so, like, on this specific thing, it kind of looks or sounds unsurprising, right? If you keep investing into something, you keep progressing at it. If you stop investing, you stop progressing. Yeah, what's special about this? Like, what am I missing? Okay, so, like, maybe let's stick to this particular topic and then jump into the title, because I think its title is interesting. So one of the impressions I had from this book, which I also wrote into our notes, is that I think I may have mentioned that already, that it sounds like all the other books of a similar kind. It's kind of relatively smooth storytelling with a little bit of popular science flicker on it. And since I don't know, like, for me, it's always off-putting, because I don't know, like, maybe I'm prejudiced or biased towards me being a sciencey guy. I look for more science rather than popular in the book, and whatever the science elements that are there, they feel so unsatisfactory to me, even by the psychological research standards.
Yeah, I agree. My overall impression is that how to put it? I think in the notes you named it as pop science storytelling, and I think it illustrates specifically what it is. Like, it is a storytelling that shows some examples of some people and some cases, and that's it. But that's something I didn't like in Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. You know, sometimes this hard language, like, this is hard science, this is how it works, evidence shows, and even this researcher told me that that's how it works. was kind of lame. I mean, it's pretending to be science-based while it's not. And this thing is probably triggering another thing that keeps bothering me just like way beyond this book. When people in public claim that they have performed deep research of something, and then this deep research turns out to be 6 ResearchGate papers that they googled with a specific topic, and that's what they claim to be the deep research, and then they just quote these 6 papers, and since nobody in the room read those papers, they sound really smart.
Right. This is such a good point. So they sort of people perform song and dance of deep research rather than actually engaging in deep research, and sort of maybe even sometimes abuse the fact that maybe the other parties in the discussion come ever so slightly unprepared, and they flood the gates with references to materials without proof of their relevance or usefulness to the discussion as well.
My basic question here is normally, have you tried looking for counterexamples, like something that disproves your concept? Like, is there a paper or research that says no? And most people just don't read them. Like, yes, I read my side of story. I collected enough examples for storytelling, and I keep doing keynotes.
Right. I agree with that 100%. It's so rubs me the wrong way, this whole notion of proving some general thesis or ideas or hypothesis with examples. It is plain impossible. The only thing that is provable with example is existence of something. If a statement includes all such and such do such and such, or in all conditions such and such happens, it's not provable with examples. That there has to be a deeper logic. And I also felt like, yeah, when they were proposing examples of successful, quote unquote, shall I say, generalists or career switchers, I'm like, yeah, this person was successful. Were they successful because of switching? What about probably millions of other people who are switching all the time and they are not successful? Like, what are the other factors that play a role here? It's so easy to pick convenient examples and claim that some generalized conclusion holds true.
I think I've read books which are a bit more humble about
Mm-hmm.
the level of research they've done and the level of certainty they have about the topic. And it's fine. I mean, you could read about the same examples and stories if the person said, like, guys, let's look at this example, and this is what I think my experience illustrates.
And this would be so much more fair and so much more useful, I think, as well, because I sometimes like reading books like this, they present ideas which I think are good, solid ideas, but if they give poor justification for why those ideas make sense or why they're useful, it undermines credibility of the idea by itself. If because then someone can ask, like, if this is the best thing that's going for that idea, how good that idea really is.
I feel that that's kind of, public speaking and academic feature a bit. As an example, I've been reading a lot about objectives and key results, OKRs, recently. And whenever I get into a book published by a business school, they say, like, do these, don't do these, don't do that. That's it. Like, that's the way. This is the way. Everything else is wrong. That's how OKRs work. And then I come to a real business and I see, like, nope, they have the bonus system related to OKRs and they're fine. I mean, they perform, they achieve goals, they're quite ambitious. And the academic section says, like, don't never ever do that. Why don't we just collect 2 examples when it worked, 2 examples when it didn't work, 2 examples how it was done differently, and let people decide and judge what works? Moreover, draw their own conclusions about their industry, their culture, their other sections. Like, in this regards, in this book mentioned chess players a lot, athletes a lot. Does it mean that it corresponds to other fields and areas, or it's purely sports and academic growth areas?
Right. Yep. I agree with that. So maybe if we circle back a little bit to the title, so much crap about the title. So and the title, the subtitle or the tagline says how generalists triumph in a specialized world. How would you define a generalist? Like if you just read that cover of the book, what would you expect the book to be about when it mentions generalists?
Sounds to me like a person without deep specialization in something, comparing a manager to a dental surgeon. A manager is a universal, general, applicable position in most companies you can imagine, while a dental surgeon is a person who has to work for years to get the experience and the qualification to perform a very specific job and probably is not very good at other things. So that would be my perception.
This is interesting because I would read it slightly or substantially more differently. To me, generalist would be a person who is maybe intentionally not deep enough in any specific area, but once again, kind of more or less intentionally goes for breadth of their exposure because this is what makes them generalists. They know a little bit about different areas and this is what they do, as opposed to specialists whose kind of aim or purpose is to know everything about one particular area. And in that regard, I would not put managers as generalists because like supposedly they should be specialists in organizing work and dealing with groups of people.
For me, it's a different term. It's a professional. Like there are professional managers and not very professional managers. But generally, I think when I think about a career, I can imagine a business trainer who does all sorts of things and who does specifically conflict resolution and studies this topic, gets deeper and doesn't take feedback, cross-cultural communications, written correspondence, and the other things, but just focuses on a specific domain area for a while.
But then an example I would have for something like this would be like in a medical field, like a GP practitioner, general practitioner
Generalist, yep.
Yeah, is kind of intentionally generalist. It is their work to know sufficiently about a lot of different areas of medicine to be able to kind of at least render initial diagnosis and maybe direct or refer a person to a specialist, but that doesn't make them unprofessional or bad professional. It's just their profession to know.
Moreover, I think that there are like a few ways how these things evolve. The T-shaped area, when you specialize in something and then you start collecting expertise from the neighboring territories and integrate your knowledge into the broader system. And the other thing is when people actually start checking and trying different roles, careers, and positions, and later stick to something and go deeper and deep dive into a specific domain.
Right, but to me, I would not ever call both of those things as being generalist. If you asked me to prepare a public talk about those kind of things like T-shaped specialists or I don't know, like switchers or explorers, however we call them, never in a million years I would use the word generalist to describe those people. And this why this whole thing was so kind of misleading personally for me, because I expected generalists in a sense of the kind of GP kind of a person, and this is what wasn't at all what the book was talking about.
Yeah, I think it's about I understood the author correctly. He meant how people succeed at different roles and how they get to their peak performance. And it's mostly about the learning curve, like how intensively and how much they should learn to become successful.
Right. Yeah, because I agree. Yeah, and they're like the person who goes deep into one area, but then switches into another area and goes sort of deep and successful. There, to me, they are not generalists. They are twice specialists or something along those lines. And it is so great that they can bring the kind of experience and kind of pattern recognition and ideas from other fields into, well, from their prior field of expertise into their new field of expertise. We get a lot of great ideas that way. And that's the whole notion of lateral thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the book refers to.
Just a question. As you were listening through the book, did you feel the connection between the chapters? Like whether the chapters were somehow structured or...
I'll try to give you a weak answer to this question, because initially I didn't feel connection between the chapters, but then by later stages of the book I felt that they are connected by being disconnected from one another, if that makes sense. I learned to expect that, this new chapter is about something. Like it's like a start of a new mini book on a new, maybe adjacent or somehow related topic.
And that's probably why it felt like an audiobook to me, because it seemed like a series of episodes of a podcast about a topic. Like they are all connected by the theme. There are different episodes where hosts describe different experiments or situations, but one episode is autonomous. Like you could just listen to chapter 5 and then 2 and then 6 and then 3 and still be fine.
I think this is fair. And yeah, I think anyone can read individual chapters and don't miss much, because it also didn't feel like the book builds on the ideas that are being introduced. Like every once in a while, the ideas would be loosely linked back to some other things that were discussed in the book, but then each chapter sort of makes its own point, which is more or less standalone.
Is there anything else about the title that bothers you?
No. Yeah, it was kind of bothering me initially, but then when I accepted that the title doesn't have like the especially the word generalist in the title does not necessarily have relevance to what the book is talking about, I kind of let go of it and I made peace.
I have 2 more questions to the title. The first word is triumph. Seemed to me like a very nice way to avoid the word success, like succeed, and just not to make it very buzzword book. It's how generalists triumph, but not succeed. And then in a specialized world kind of implies that people perceive world as specialized, which I think they don't.
Yeah. I think that also would be a fair critique of the book, that maybe it ever so slightly overindulges in building some strawmans and then dismantling them. Like this notion of the world as being kind of specialized, maybe in certain areas like pure academia or something along those lines. There are some expectations or traditions that make it feel as if the specialization is all you need. But yeah, I don't necessarily feel like this is applicable to the broad world or the broad workplace.
The thing is that you kind of buy into this thing, because at first most of his examples come from sports. Chess, tennis, golf, and this is where it kind of makes more sense. But when he later kind of changes into professions and business, it stops making sense, because it doesn't work like that anymore.
Yeah, I think people may have gathered that we, not only here, but in other areas, we think a lot alike. And I do agree with this. Also, this is what was one other thing that I felt about the book, as it kind of slid between the topics and ideas in almost imperceptible way without making kind of differentiation. In general, it left me with the impression that thoughts and ideas and maybe examples are stretched too far into the areas where they are not necessarily applicable, or where their applicability is not proven strongly enough. And I'm like, yes, maybe, but can you explain why you think that this is relevant, or this makes
Which reminded me an off topic, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, let's go for it.
3 weeks ago, I was reached out in LinkedIn by a person who offered me to write a book.
How cool is that?
They provide editing and design services and support for the book writing. And I was kind of intrigued when they mentioned that my load in the process would be 6 hours a month. That seemed weird. So instead of just blocking the guy, I asked, like, could you show me some examples? Like, what are the books that you've... I don't know. Most of our books are NDA. People don't show that they written them with us, but I can show you some chapters. Like, I'm fine. Chapters will do. Man, that looked like GPT generated marketing reports by LinkedIn, Deloitte, and some others. And it was so lame. And I can totally see how most business books get that way. Like, somebody decided that they can take a public speaker who did a nice presentation and transform it into a book and a career for the guy. And then when the person publishes the book, it goes differently. And I'm talking about this because I have the opposite example of a Ukrainian business consultant on business processes, Natalia Zaveruha, who published her book about uncontrollable business processes and how to put the structure from the chaos. And it makes so much sense. Like, I read every chapter and it's meaningful. It's based on experience. There are wonderful examples. There are limitations. It's like pure practice. And then I read some OKR books when it's just like random thoughts, ideas, quotes, pictures, and everything, which is totally not. And I can understand that people who wrote those kind of books, they spend 6 hours a month doing that, while Natalia invested half a year into structuring the book, designing the examples, double checking it with experts, getting feedback and references, and then publishing it. These books like are on the same shelf. You come to a bookstore and it's so hard to see which one is which because they're all beautiful. They have the fancy covers, and I'm so pissed by the industry that creates these kind of products and people who buy them, because bestsellers mean that like people actually consume this sort of stuff.
I would take an exception to that. I think this is such a profound idea, and I was about to crack a joke that, like, isn't this whole an example of how specialists should triumph in our messy and unstructured world with producing better work? Yeah, the struggle is real with something like books, and I think like the way I apply my lateral thinking to this kind of thing is that we are dealing with a market of with asymmetrical information. When the buyers, they see the book covers and kind of maybe design, they don't have actual information about the depth and the content of the book, and they have to make a decision which book to buy and read. Lo and behold, okay, it's proven in economics theory that in those markets with asymmetrical informations, lemons always, well, often, I should check my sources, but maybe lemons, like the bad things, always bubble to the market because they to the top of the market because they're cheaper to produce, and because of asymmetry in information, they are indistinguishable from good from good things there. And there was one more thing I wanted to say about this whole book situation, but maybe it will.
While you're remembering this, it's counterintuitive to me because, for example, in the movie industry, most films that have these high IMDb ratings are actually quite good, and most that have low ratings and are not even getting to the cinemas are quite bad. And you could normally correlate the popularity and the quality of the product. Not in 100%. Yes, there are some hidden gems that didn't hit the markets, but mostly that's true for me, in my experience at least. It doesn't work with songs, for instance, in the music industry. I think that popular songs and good songs are very different kind of songs. And this is where like I wouldn't trust the best-selling top hit, something golden album or something along those lines, because it's just the intuitive, irrational, and people's judgment about the music, about the book, even about learning. Like I study at some courses and people leave amazing feedback about the course. And I'm the only one who's frustrated by the structure and the speaker and the inconsistency and logical fallacies, because for the mass market, I think it's kind of enjoyable. And that's it. It covers some kind of needs and people put all tens and it becomes the top business school. While some things that are not pleasant but helpful, they don't get the top tens because, well, it's not pleasant. Like I wouldn't recommend it to anyone because it was tough.
This is interesting. I have thoughts about that, but I also remembered what I wanted to say about the books. I think I also put it in my notes here. I'm always annoyed at the notion of bestseller for books and kind of the number of copies sold as a measure of quality of the book, because I don't want best-selling books. I want best reading books, and we don't have any insight or any reliable insight into how good or how interesting the books are to read them. That's number one. And number two, connecting to your ideas about movies and songs. I think those ratings that we can see here and there, they are relevant or useful insofar as we are parts of the groups that put those ratings out. And especially with movies recently, I feel like I'm so on the opposite way with the general public. I just simply cannot trust those ratings, because like recent blockbustery movies that people seem to enjoy, like most of them I couldn't watch through the end. I'm just like, at some point I become actively annoyed and frustrated with myself that I'm wasting my precious time on this. Almost, I don't want to cast a shadow on AI, but almost kind of AI generated slump. So that, yeah, I just can't stand that. Maybe it's just me. And I think the opposite to what you said, I think with songs, it's ever so slightly better for me than with movies.
Just to double check, I'm right now filtering all our book clubs since 2023.
Right.
And the books we've read were not just the books, the materials. The report, second and third order effects of AI, which we criticized harshly. Thought leadership, an article, I believe, a blog article, which we dismantled. The 4 steps to the epiphany, I won't even comment. The founder's mode. Started Villain was good, I think, for me. It was a fiction one. How Minds Change, I think, totally demolished. Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman was good, which was not a business book, though. It was something like an autobiography
right.
kind of thing. How Big Things Get Done, I think you dismantled it like completely. We're Legion, We're Bob was good because it was fiction books. What's the conclusion, please? Stop reading this business stuff.
I think it could be a conclusion as well, because I don't necessarily think that we selected the books specifically for the purpose of liking those books in the end, right? I think in many cases we were curious about the book. We heard about it. It was on the bestseller list somewhere, so it came to our attention, and then we decided to read the book and see if there are good ideas.
I'm just trying to remember an episode where we would both say like, "Oh my god, this is amazing! That was so good! I learned so much, and I keep thinking about ideas from this title."
I think I would probably want to say that for every book we discussed, I got at least something out of that.
Yeah, but you have to get through the irritation, and you basically get this insights despite the author.
Yeah, it could be, but maybe can it be that it's our default mode or approach to discussion, that we maybe over index on the things that we didn't like to make it for TV drama and stuff like that, because otherwise people are not going to listen if they do not get that negative energy and push from.
Well, firstly, we don't really get any feedback anyway, so we don't know.
It's a bit of a shame
if it works that way. But I think, how much does an average book in the audio format take? Like 6 hours, 7 hours?
Yeah, I think it's on average, it's around 7 hours. Slightly longer books can be 12. I think the 300-page book is roughly 7 to 8 hours.
So just as an alternative, if we picked 7 hours long of different podcast episodes about this topic, would it be any different in terms of our learning experience and the consumption? Like basically you invest the same amount of time into the audio content, but it comes from different genres. It could be, even as you mentioned, scientific pop stuff.
That is surprisingly deep and profound question. So if we are talking about 8 hours of listening time, so we are probably looking at least at 8
to 10 episodes of something.
Of diverse content. I hate this word, of diverse opinions. Let's put it this way.
It could
on
be
a
like
given
2 episodes of one show, 2 episodes of the other, not necessarily a single episode, and all 8 should be very different, but still.
Yeah, but it would be what I'm really, really, really tempted to say that the value of something like that on, well, I say on average, it's difficult to average things out, but it's not inconceivable, and it can be that the sort of quality of information or ideas or impression about a particular topic or area you get from diverse set of podcasts can be higher than from one book, especially if that book does not make a concerted effort to present a rounded view on a particular problem.
I suggest that we make an A/B test for the next book club. We've already discussed the book, The Art of Rest.
The Art of Rest. I think you mentioned it to me, yes.
What if one of us reads or listens to a book and the other one does the 6 to 8 episodes about rest from various podcasts to compare how it went?
And compare the notes. Yes, I like this. No, I seriously like this, especially given that the next book club episode is going to be in like 6 weeks. If we are diligent about this, especially the person who gets to work on podcasts and compiles a list of things and stuff like that, I mean, avoid doing those things, doing the research in the very last minute. Yeah, I like it. I think it can be very, very, very interesting to go different routes and then compare notes and then make some conclusions.
And I guess for the next one, we could just switch. Then another person takes the podcasts and we just do it all the way around, maybe with a different book, or maybe with the same book even.
Yes, this is great. This is great. So are you already looking for a place on the shelf for a Nobel Prize based on this research that we are setting out to do?
Yeah. Like I actually have an empty shelf right over there.
No, I think it's seriously kind of great idea to compare these two things. Bit genuinely interesting. And also, it would give an extra opportunity for our listeners to sort of kind of engage with us and provide inputs and maybe suggest good podcasts or whatever else it might be on the topic of having rest. Help that one of us who is going to do the podcast thingy. All right. So do we pick the roles now or do we keep it a secret for a little while?
I think we can pick now. Any preferences on your side? You're the busiest of us, so.
Well, yeah, many people said that to me recently, and somehow I don't like it. I take it to mean that I don't set priorities and manage them well enough that I appear to.
Let's say I just exercise more flexibility about my time. And
I don't know. I think that definitely I would probably say that it would be. I feel like it's a little bit less work reading the book and kind of exploring from there rather than starting with an open-ended field and picking the materials, because there can be a danger, right? You can listen to 20 hours of podcast material and pick only 8 that you think the most valuable, which would be ever so slightly unfair.
no, I'm going to go for a question on Facebook and Instagram to ask people for references and recommendations. I'll talk to ChatGPT and I will pick 8 purely by the episode descriptions, and that's it. I'm not going to listen to more than... You should tell me what's the amount of hours in the audiobook.
Okay. Yeah,
and
let's do it. Okay, so I think we kind of started implying that I'm doing the book, which I'm totally fine with. Let me check. It's The Art of Rest. Entirely unpretentious name for the book. It's like
I think I
not
already...
anything like Triumph and stuff like that.
I should have it on my Audible. Yeah, it's 7 hours and 11 minutes. So this is exactly how much audio content I'm going to take.
I went to the Audible website and 7 hours and 11 minutes. You can see it there. Buy with 1 credit, confirm purchase.
So
There
I'll
you
ask for
go.
the references. I will try to balance diversity, like not to listen to more than 2 episodes of the same author. And that will probably be
And that
all
would
my
be fair.
limitations.
Yeah, I think that thing alone could go a long way towards you getting more out of your time. But that's great. Yeah, I think I so super like that. Like it. Let's do it. So any last minute words of wisdom on the range and how generalists are supposed to triumph in supposedly specialized world? No. Okay, I have the crickets. I'll insert them right there, so that listeners would get the full experience over here. Maybe like the super last, not to end in silence. Would you recommend people read this book, and what's your evaluation of the value of your time spent with this book on the scale from 0 to 5?
A solid 1.
And I take it to mean that people shouldn't read this book.
Well, unless they would like to get a similar experience.
Experience.
Maybe their life is too nice and too like they've had too much quality content in the recent weeks, and they would like to get something less quality. Then yeah, sure. Who knows? Like some people like pain.
That's interesting. I think probably we will switch the roles because usually I'm the most critical of the book. I would probably give it like a 2.53. You can get useful food for thought from this book, but again, kind of you need to come to it critically and try to see deeper. Definitely don't expect the book to discuss what it says on the tin, like the generalist thing, as we did. Like it is in my case, it was a complete misnomer, but the general idea of lateral thinking, I think, was useful. But also that there were some dangerous ideas, like when he said, like, thinking by analogy is so useful. You can bring experience from other areas, and like, yes, the same way you can bring bad ideas, and it's not talked about. So yeah, I would be like between 2 and like a 2.5, something along those lines, like solely undecided, in between, inconclusive, think for yourself kind of recommendation.
Which makes our average score as around 2
170.
or 175. Not your top best-selling title.
Yep. Well, and if you by any chance already read or listened to this book and you have different opinions or thoughts about this, please do reach out to us by different means. In Facebook, our website, biweeklycast.com. In Spotify, there is a comment thing or Q&A thing that's also available. No one have ever used it ever, but it's there. So you can be the first one to use it in the history of our podcast. So there are many avenues to reach out.
I was so surprised that we got a comment on one of our Russian-speaking episodes, like somewhere on YouTube. Did you get that email a week ago?
Yeah, thanks.
So weird.
But it means that people are out there, like they say in airports. Please make yourself known to the check-in agent at gate.
Yeah, but
8.
I mean, this episode is unlisted. Like, I don't know how to find it now, and I have the admin access to YouTube and other.
Yeah, I suspect that there might be they are unlisted, but they are not entirely private. So if there is a link somewhere out there lurking,
Yeah, but I mean, like,
how will you find it?
if I wanted, like, I would struggle finding
That's a fair
it.
story. All right. Until then, we will start soliciting advice for exploring the art of the rest. I'll start downloading the audiobook to my iPhone to listen. And until then, we wish everyone good weeks.